What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to Unit 4.2. We're doing imperialism in Africa. Just a quick refresher. Imperialism is when one country goes in and takes over another country, forces their culture, their beliefs, their ideas of how people should live on those people. And the people who are going out and conquering the places are the industrialized countries that we did in Unit 3. Specifically, we're looking at Britain and France and Germany and all these countries over here, including the United States, that are all over here. So we're really looking at Europe and North America, and these countries are going out and trying to take over other places, and they're able to do it because they have superior weapons, and they've gone through the Industrial Revolution. And we talked about the motivations for them on this side right behind me: nationalism, economic, religion, and social Darwinism. And one of the first places that imperialism really takes hold and happens, and one of the worst places that it happens in, is in Africa. The continent of Africa, the little background on it, is very diverse. A lot of stereotypes of people from the West, being Western Europe and the United States, think that Africa is all one giant big culture, and it's actually not. It's super crazy diverse. There's a lot of different languages and ethnicities and nationalities. Pre-imperialism. So if there had been a map drawn back in the day of all the different, even today actually, of all the different nationalities, each of these different colors would be a different ethnic group. And by ethnic group, I mean different languages and culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very diverse. There's empires that existed there before the Europeans get there. And mostly the Europeans, they've been on the outskirts, on the coastlines for a while, really since the Age of Exploration, which you should have learned about last year, but they've never really gone into the interior. Then a monumental event happens. Besides the Industrial Revolution in these countries that are industrialized, a competition, or this idea of nationalism, like we talked about, where one country goes in and conquers a place in Africa, and then another country in Europe wants two of them. What starts off this competition is the invasion, or the conquering of an area called the Congo. And Congo is right here in Central Africa. And the quick little story, the king of the Congo at the time was having a problem with slavery. Neighboring tribes and neighboring empires were capturing his people and then selling them into slavery. And the king of the Congo could not figure out a solution to this. It was a very complex problem. So the king of Belgium, and Belgium is in Europe, and I'm going to come back here for a second just so you can see, Belgium is a very tiny country right here. It's orange. It's right there. And Belgium, the king of Belgium, King Leopold II, goes to the king of the Congo and says, hey, look, we'll come in and help you out. We'll stop your slave problem. I know you got it going. I know it's an issue. We'll come in and help you out. And in return, all we ask is you give us trade rights. So you trade your products with us so we can bring them back to our factories in Belgium and sell them to people around the world. So the king of the Congo is like, yeah, cool. Come on in. Help me out. And as soon as the Belgians come in with their soldiers, they capture the king and take over the entire empire or kingdom of the Congo. What the Congo has and what resource they want, and this is going to be a common theme during imperialism. Every place has a resource that these European countries and the United States want. Congo has rubber, and today, rubber is needed for factories, for parts, for machinery, for tires, for all of those things. Up to this point, there's no synthetic rubber. And if you know anything about car tires today, all of our car tires are made of synthetic or fake rubber. Back then, 1800s, everything had to come from a tree, and rubber comes from the sap of a rubber tree. And Congo has a lot of them, and the Belgians wanted that material. So what happens is the Belgians go in and conquer them, and they rule directly. They change the laws, they overthrow the government, they force the Belgian or the Congo people to learn Belgian culture and language, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in the process, they are going to force these people. They're not slaves. They're not enslaving them, but it's pretty freaking close. But they are going to force these people in the Congo to work for the Europeans to harvest rubber. And it's very dangerous. It's very deadly. There's a lot of problems with it. You have to not only get the sap out of the tree, which is the rubber, then you have to heat it up, and then you have to shape it. And it's very deadly. And the Belgians went in there and required the people in the Congo to harvest so much rubber each month, and if they didn't do that, they were punished. And the way they punished them was by chopping off hands. And you can see these images here of people, and these are just a few of the pictures that were taken at the time. It is a horrifically awful thing. In the process of this, and I put up here, this is one of the worst things you've probably never learned about. From 5 to 10 million Congolese people died as a result of the Belgian invasion, both directly killed by the Belgians and then indirectly killed from work conditions and starvation and all the problems that are going to be created. So it's really horrific. To add on top of that, the Belgians are going to bring some of these Congolese people back into Belgium, into the capital of Brussels, and have them live in zoos. Human zoos existed until the 1960s. In 1960s, like that's grandparents were alive when this happened. So you can see this picture here, this little girl from the Congo who's walking around, and the people in Belgium are giving her food. And we have another guy here who is kind of in this enclosure, and it's really this horrifically awful stuff. And it goes back to this social Darwinism where these Europeans don't even view people from Africa as human. They view them as less than what they are. And I just point out here, like, this also happened in the United States. There were human zoos in the United States as well. It's horrifically awful. It's one of the periods of history that a lot of people don't talk about, but I just want to point it out. So Belgium conquers the Congo, and again, the Congo is right here. Here's the Congo, and it leads to a scramble for Africa, meaning that other countries in Europe are going to try and go and conquer the continent of Africa and try and get resources. They want the resources there, so there's the money aspect of it, but there's also the competition part where you don't want to let your arch rival get more colonies than you do in Africa. So the British and the French are competing with the Germans and the Italians and all these different things. To avoid war between the European countries over this continent, they hold a conference in this capital city of Germany, which is Berlin, in order to avoid a war. And they hold this meeting with 17 or 14 European countries, and they determine that basically there's a couple of rules you have to follow in order to colonize. You have to plant a flag, you have to sign something, and that avoids war between the European countries. Meanwhile, they're just conquering this continent without any input from the people in Africa, and they totally take it over. And this is what it looked like in Africa in 1800 in terms of where the Europeans were. And I showed you that map of all the cultures, and this is what it looks like by 1914. Every place in Africa has been conquered except for two. We have Abyssinia here, which we'll talk about in a second, and Liberia here. They're the only two countries that did not get conquered. And Liberia was not conquered because it was set up by the United States as a colony for former slaves who wanted to leave the United States and go back to Africa. And then Abyssinia is the other one. And Abyssinia is known today as the country of Ethiopia. One of the cool things, or one of the things that did not happen often, but one of the successful things that did happen is that in Ethiopia, they successfully fought back. So the Italians came in and tried to take over Ethiopia, and the Ethiopians were able to successfully resist under the leader of this guy. His name's Menelik II. He goes in there, they stop him, or they stop the Italians and push the Italians out. So Ethiopia remains independent. The irony is that one of the motivations for imperialism is spreading religion, and the people in Ethiopia are Christian. So they're actually invading a fellow Christian country. More to follow on that because Ethiopia is going to get invaded by the Italians in the 1930s, but that's another story for another day. One other example of resistance. So we're resisting militarily. The people don't like being conquered. Like, that's just kind of the theme here. We're investing militarily, but also religiously. This is kind of a side note, kind of an interesting story. There's a tribe in South Africa called the Xhosa. It's Xhosa. And the Xhosa are invaded by the British. They want to kick out the British. And these two girls, one is 15 and one is 8, they're two sisters in this tribe. And they are told by the gods or the ancestors from a dream, they both have the same dream, that if the Xhosa tribe kills all the cattle, all their cows, which is their main source of revenue and income, that the British will be swept out to sea and the water or the sun will come and burn them all to death. Some reason the people of the Xhosa tribe buy into it. They kill all their cows, they burn all their crops, and unfortunately for them, the British still remain. It ended up they killed almost 500,000 cattle, and it led to really a devastation of the Xhosa tribe. And as a result of this, it's unsuccessful. But I do want to point out, and the thing is, so here's kind of the theme. The theme is the Europeans are going in and conquering Africa. They're treating the people horribly. Belgium is the example. Some people do try and resist. One is militarily, like the Ethiopians do. Some people try and resist religiously, which is a little more unsuccessful, like they do in South Africa. And that's kind of the summary. So that's a quick overview on Africa. We'll do more in class. You got any questions, you let me know. I'm out.